Welcome to another episode of the Urban Wall Street Project. I'm your host, Earl Christian III, and today we'll be talking to an esteemed gentleman who's been doing major things in the book distribution business for over 20 years, working with schools, publishers, distributors, to bring African-American books and the history of our culture to young schools and older schools and young children and older children and just the community at large across America. Unfortunately, a lot of the history books that's in the current schools don't always depict African-American heritage and African-American history. So when we have an individual who's doing things and enlightening the community and making major headway in that particular arena and have been doing it for so long, it's very important that we recognize those individuals and give them the opportunity to let the world know why it's important that we recognize African-American cultures and the books that represent our history. I'd like to introduce you to a fine gentleman who I have the pleasure of knowing for a few years now. His name is Mr. Jesse C. Harris. Mr. Harris, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
Yes. Mr. Harris, for all you know, is the president and founder of Source International Technology Corporation. So for those individuals that are sitting at home, Mr. Harris, that are not familiar, why don't you share with us? Let us know what Source International exactly is.
Okay. Presently, Source International is a book distribution company. We distribute educational materials. This company was founded back in 1989. The book aspect of the company. I do have a history that goes back further than the book distribution, and that's I was involved at one time in trying to move items in West Africa over to this country and bring hard cash to those folks over on the other side. But the problem that I was confronted with there is a similar problem to what we're confronted with in this country. Many of the people in that particular region, they did not have a base, a financial base to start their own companies and continue their companies. They had to rely on outside people. So that effort went to naught. It was a great experience for me, though. But back in 1989, I was sitting in a room with a gentleman who's a social worker, and his name is R. Edward Lee. And Ed Lee was trying to think. He had several people that he wanted to provide with a gift for Christmas. Right. And the dilemma was, what do you get 200 people? Right. And it's not going to break your bank. So being a proponent of African American history, Mr. Lee was, well, what I should say, he has been a proponent of African American history. He did a lot of reading, a lot of writing. So he developed a calendar that year called the Black Facts Calendar. Okay. And although he's a social worker, that's one of the areas that he had. He has a lot of experience and a lot of exposure in. And that Black Facts Calendar, I'll just show you this item. Gives us this particular item is a textbook in calendar format. Okay. And the Black Facts, it's just locked with a lot of information. Excellent. And what he did that year was really started me in business, because once he developed that first calendar, and I think he did about 2,500, which is a small print run. Mr. Lee, I took a calendar from Mr. Lee to the school district 10 here in the Bronx, and at the district, I showed it to a couple of people. They were just ecstatic. At that point in the education era, they were trying to introduce into the school system the curriculum of inclusion, to include into the curriculum those who have been left out in the past. And they found that the calendar offered them an exceptional amount of information about people who've made contributions to this country without the recognition that they so deserve.
Excellent. That's excellent. I hope the individuals will definitely listen because you're going to get some good knowledge. Now, Mr. Harris, I know when you started your business, Source International, your focus was different from what it is now. And you elaborated a little bit, but could you tell us what the change is and where did it come from and where did it come about?
Okay. Well, as I said, the focus initially was I traveled, made several trips to West Africa, trying to establish fish farms, chicken farms, also to bring an economy into some of those countries that really needed it to develop a better infrastructure. And I saw it as a thriving business. But as I said to you earlier, the problem that I was confronted with was the fact that none of the residents of those, I can't say none, the ones that I was in touch with, they didn't have ownership. They didn't have access to the finances necessary. Although I had access to finance from this side, they had to have something established on the other side.
Definitely.
But once I showed the calendar to some people, as I said, coming back, well, that's in 1990, showing the calendar to people in the education area, they sent me directly to the 110 Livingston Street, and you all know what that was.
Right.
The program there, we were starting the school year in September, and the teachers were having their annual meeting somewhere in Long Island. And once they saw the calendar, and their focus again was to start the curriculum of inclusion. Today it's known as the multicultural curriculum. So they were very, very appreciative of the fact that I brought this particular piece of information to them. Well, it began to give me ideas because when I grew up in East Harlem and in the school system here in New York City. And when I was a youngster, there was Dick and Jane in the books, and Dick and Jane was blonde-haired, blue-eyed. There was a person that certainly was supposed to represent me, but that was Little Black Sambo and the Tiger.
Right.
So, that was the kind of representation we had.
Right.
But, you have to go back and look at certain things. And, I pointed out that there was no view of us. And growing up in the school system, everybody I looked at was Eurocentric for the most part.
Right.
Not that they were bad people. They were great. Teachers were wonderful people, and they guided me. But what I think would have sort of propelled me in the education arena would be to see a person in front of me that was, imparting knowledge to me. And by imparting that knowledge, he was also giving me inspiration to say, wow, here's a man that looks like me.
Right.
I can probably do this too. I can become a professional.
Excellent.
And so that was an important part of my thought in terms of starting this business.
Okay. So now, my question, of course, is, reading and looking at the different books you have, is a plethora of knowledge and information. And I would want to ask you, aside from the obvious, why did you choose the book business, and why these particular types of books?
Well, we have to look at the fact that in the course of life here in this country, you tend to look at what would help a young person to be successful. Reading, knowledge is power. Again, I remember listening to some of our African American historians, and they would say things like, if you want to keep something from a person of color, put it in print.
Right.
As you are well aware, in this country, we were not afforded the opportunity of an education early on when we were first brought here. And we still, we're sort of trying to catch up. And I think my thought was the books were a certain way, a sure way for youngsters to catch up in this particular area, because you can read, you can travel in a book, you can gain knowledge in a book, you can get a profession in a book.
Definitely.
So a book gives you direction. Some of our youngsters, I think, if they have comprehended some things early on, it projects them later on.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying from high school down to kindergarten, or from kindergarten to high school, if a youngster has the ability to read, he has the ability to soar in terms of his professional opportunities.
Without question, without question.
So that's one of the reasons I picked the book business. But the other reason I saw, when I took the calendar, my initial thought was, okay, I'm going to sell this calendar, and we're going to print 30,000 of them or 40,000 of the calendars, and the school system is just going to buy it and make me rich.
Right.
But there was another thing that I definitely sort of encountered and became aware of, was I took the calendar to a couple of shows.
Okay.
And when I say shows, they are exhibits, book exhibits. And I found that there was just a lot of information around people who used to, and they still do, write. And these are people of color. And they printed their own books. They were self-publishing. But they didn't have a person to distribute their books.
Okay.
And so I saw that as my niche. And what I did was I sort of worked out and negotiated with them, worked out a business deal. And in my family, I have a wife who is, I think, brilliant. And she is in the education area. She would read certain books that I brought back, and she would indicate to me that they had educational implications.
Okay.
And those books then I would present to the Department of Education and have them listed on my contract. And let me say this. I was so fortunate around that time, because it normally takes an enormous amount of time to get a contract.
Right, that's what
with the Department of Education.
I was wondering how receptive and how many obstacles or the simplicity that would be involved in getting this actual type of contract involved with the Board of Ed specifically.
Right. It's usually a very complex situation. There are usually many obstacles, and understanding, what you have to do and who you have to see. However, when the calendar gave me an opportunity to slide right through the system. I think within, I would say it was 3 to 4 weeks.
Wow.
I had a contract with the Department of Ed.
That's amazing. That's a powerful calendar.
Yes.
Now let me ask you, and from your experience and your theory, or your theory, the opinion and the theory is all the same. We know that, like as you just previously stated, getting a contract with the Board of Ed, sometimes you can jump through hoops and hurdles and you'll still wait a long time. But apparently the receptivity to the Black Facts calendar was very high. But even with that, how difficult do you think it may have been had you not had this particular calendar? Or what do you think made, or if not so much that question, what do you think made the receptivity so great that would allow you to alleviate such a long waiting period? I mean, you were able to do it in record time. What do you think enabled that?
The focus of the Department of Ed, or the Board of Ed at that time.
Okay.
The fact that they were trying to do something to rectify some of the wrongs and it's just not the department, it's the country.
Right.
The wrongs against people of color, and not giving them the appropriate recognition. And they didn't want the children, as they stated, to come up in that manner. They wanted youngsters to know that they were accepted, they were equal, and they wanted them to know that we had a big hand, people of color, in developing situations and programs and different kinds of things in this country, inventions in this country, that made life better in this United States.
That is so true. And I'm happy to hear you say that. It kind of took a question right out of my mouth. But to add on to it, it's so important that our children recognize the fact that we have made extreme contributions to the development of this country. Because a lot of times that's where your pride might come from, a self-esteem, feeling like I come from a line of people that have done some great things. And unfortunately, when you open up books and everybody is a Florentine maiden or blonde hair and blue eyes, and you don't get the opportunity to see people of color who have made accomplishments or who are contributing as far as the invention of so many different products and services and technological advances we utilize today in America. And when children of color don't know that, it kind of makes them feel like they have no place. So the fact that, you know, there are so many books written by us, for us, produced by us, distributed by us, manufactured by us in the community, that's a beautiful thing. Over the past, 20 years since you've been doing this, how do you think your presence and your book distribution business with regard to the Board of Education, how do you feel your presence has impacted maybe the multicultural understanding in the communities?
Well, I think I've made some contributions. I don't feel that I've done enough. I don't believe that enough has been done to expose our youngsters to their past and to bring them to the present. You made one hell of a statement in terms of self-esteem. That is so important. The youngsters today have sometimes very little self-esteem.
Definitely.
They're being bombarded in the schools with, passing these tests. I would like to see youngsters strive to be scientists.
Right.
And how do they do that when they're bombarded with, this quarter you have to take this test and you have to make this score, so you have to read these books, and the teachers, I can sit here and I hear people complaining about teachers. I hear them complaining about principals. There's a principal, I go to her school at 7 o'clock at night, and no, I don't have to make an appointment. She's there.
Right.
There are, in fact, a couple of them that I know, and they are so concerned about their school, their administration, but they have so much work to do, so much paperwork to do. I find it probably just about impossible for a person to come down and do the administrative work and also do the academic work that's necessary to expose those children to an education that would help them in the future. I think whatever they're doing a yeoman's job.
Right.
Because they are getting just bombarded with paperwork.
And that's the reality. A lot of times, and it's so true. I mean, I work with students as well. And one thing, I've come to recognize is that sometimes change is good. And I say that to say this. 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, or 10 years ago, however long ago, when I was in elementary school, we learned about Christopher Columbus, Martin Luther King, Ponce de Leon, and a few others, right? Mm-hmm. But then 20 years later, times have changed, history has changed, many things have occurred, but the students are still learning Christopher Columbus discovered America, and Martin Luther King's story, which is a grand thing, but there's so many other events that have happened. There's so many other people of color, there's so many other people of Hispanic heritage that have made huge contributions, and they never seem to want to rewrite the history books. And my definition of insanity is if you keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, that's crazy. So when you say that, here we have a school system that's teaching kids the same things, in essence, over and over and over again, but they need to be able to adapt and produce in an ever-changing world. It's almost like they're being set up to regress.
Exactly.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I concur with you completely. And, we talk about Black History Month, and we are talking about in January King's Day coming up. And, it seems like King is the focus. King has done astronomical things for people of color in this country.
No question.
But King was inspired by other people.
Right.
What about some of those other people? We're sitting here under lights. We're talking about a man who invented the lights. That is Thomas Edison. I give him all the credit. But there was a man named Lewis Latimer.
Exactly.
If he was not there for Edison, somebody else would have probably gotten the credit for inventing the lights.
Right, not to mention Lewis Latimer created the filament that allows the light to be illuminated.
Exactly.
So without the filament, you just have an empty bulb.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you said about Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King, like you said, he's done remarkable things. But like you said, he was inspired by the people. Mm-hmm. And I see now, and I'm happy that he's being recognized in Washington. There's going to be a memorial. And contributions from businesses have come in totaling almost $65.5 million. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But here, once again, I did a special a little while ago, so we can raise $65 million for a shrine for Martin Luther King. I'm happy for it. But understand what I'm saying. We can raise $65 million for a shrine that people will come and see. But when we had over 500,000 people displaced and going through chaos with the year ago of Katrina, we couldn't even get $10 million down there. We couldn't even get $1 million in a week. So while I'm very happy for the $65 million in funding that's going to help create this shrine to recognize King's accomplishments that people will be able to see forever, let's talk about being able to spread some of that money to people who are living today and they'll be able to get to Washington. Because you got a whole lot of people now that will never be able to see that shrine because their lives have been destroyed. And these are people of color. So we have a $65 million shrine for our fallen leader, but then the people that he was inspired by and for and had dreams and visions for may not be able to get to see him because they don't have the revenue. So, you know, the dynamics in the country and how we spend our money is amazing. Like I said, I'm very happy to have the shrine, but at the same time, if we can get $65 million for a statue, we couldn't get $10 million for live people. But I digress a little bit.
Right.
You have an amazing company. You've been doing this a long time. Let me ask you, how many employees does it take you to run this operation, sir?
Well, it's a small business. Mm-hmm. And my son works with me. Okay. My wife works with me. I have some commissioned people, about 4 commissioned people throughout the country that work with me. Mm-hmm. So that's the extent of my business. My books go to different parts of the country. I have schools in California. I work with people in California. I have people in Canada, and I send the calendar to Canada. We've sent the calendar to places like Germany, Belgium, Panama. So we had a number of, we have the calendar nationally, domestically, and internationally. Okay. But, you talk about Katrina, you talk about issues like that. That's why it's so important for youngsters to learn reading and to understand what they're reading, and when they read a newspaper, to actually pull it apart. Definitely. And really see what's being said and to understand what's going on around them. And that's one of the things, if we can't read, you can't read a technical book. Definitely. So you're sort of, pigeonholed into a certain kind of position or job. People talk about computers, and they're fantastic. Mm-hmm. But the problem with computers, whatever you do with them, you have to read instructions. Exactly. Okay? And if you're going to do a program, you have to know how to read. Pretty much. So, reading and math are so essential in this world of education, and that's one of the reasons I've moved into this business. Excellent. Now, I know you have a variety of books that you brought and showed, but just be a little bit specific. Let the audience know the different types of books that you distribute. Okay. Well, let's go to the school system. Okay. I have a book here called Students of Life. Students of Life is probably this, and as you can read, it's a compact guide for youngsters going in and out of high school and getting set to go to college. Mm-hmm. This talks about funding for colleges, looking for colleges, what they have to do in high school. You can hold that up sure, so they can see that. And this book, was developed by 2 young men, about 23 years old, and they're graduates of NYU. And they come to the schools and they give talks about their particular book and why they put them together. I have a book here, and we just talked about Martin Luther King. Okay. So this is a history book, and as well as a book on English.
Okay.
It's a certain, the grade level on that book is probably, I'd say 7th grade.
All right.
At the end here, we have a book. These are stories.
Okay.
They're not factual stories, but they have factual information in it.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of each story, there are 10 stories in this book. And they're, about the man in the red, black, and green, getting an understanding of who we are as people.
All right.
And
well, real quickly because I know time is running out. Real quickly, you can let us know where you're located. Do you have a store? We can find you online.
Oh, I'm on. I'll just lay this
right, leave
right
it
there. No, I don't have a store. As I said, I work out of I have a office in my home.
Okay.
And I do have a website. It's called KamKai Books. That's KamKyibooks.com.
Okay.
And so you can find my books on the website.
Okay. All right. Well, listen. I've enjoyed having you here, Mr. Harris. Hopefully, you people at home, you've learned some things. If you're a school, or a church, or organization, if you want to get involved, you want to have some of these books as a part of your collection, you can reach out. Mr. Harris's information will be at the end of the show. You can reach out to the website. You've been watching the Urban Wall Street Project once again. Hopefully you've learned some really positive things. And Mr. Harris?
Now, I just wanted to say the Black Facts calendar also, you just mentioned churches. It's a wonderful fundraiser.
There you go. So if you're a church, you have a fundraiser, reach out to the Source International, get you a copy of the Black Facts calendar, and you can do some positive things for your community. This is Earl Christian III. Once again, you've been watching the Urban Wall Street. Keep your head up. Peace.